Hello and welcome to the DM's Book Club, a weekly book club podcast where we talk about some Dungeons & Dragons and discuss how we might include them in our role-playing campaigns. My name is Fiona, and back with me, yet again, third time's the charm, we've got the wonderful Benjamin Gray. Benjamin! Hey, hey, hey!
Fiona and Ben, right in again.
Boo, 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 boo. Yeah, how are you doing, my friend?
Motorcycles. Hi, I'm okay. Hi. Doing good.
Good.
I read a book. I read some books.
I know. I forced you to come back again to talk with me more about Silverplate, because obviously we talked about the character options last time, and although we didn't really go into too much detail about it, we're like, oh, this is interesting. Let's go to chapter 2 and dive in, and we both went,
Yeah, we thought the first one had a lot of stuff in it.
I guess to be fair, that when we talked about character creation stuff, it was like, here's some ideas for characters and whatnot, and then here's a lot of mechanics stuff, and you're like, okay, well, we're not going to go too deep into that. I'm like, but what's the vibe? What's the story we have here? And then we've gone into chapter 2 essentially, which is the land of Silverplate, and yes, there's a lot in this chapter. I think roughly about 94 pages in total, which I forced you to read and be like, what do you think of this? Grabbing you by your lapels. Like, you better come back on and tell me what you think about this book about food for D&D.
When you said the word chapter 2, it really undersells how much we read.
Yes.
Like, chapter 2 is fully half of this, 250-page book. Like, there are 4 chapters. Yeah, and this is also definitely the part of the book that the people who wrote this really wanted to write.
Yeah, 100%. As a quick overview of the structure of this chapter, it starts off with some deities, about 13 in total, the general history, which is actually quite a short section about what Silverplate is, and then it goes into quite a big section about the different geography places, because it's basically, Silverplate, if you imagine it, is like a Pangea surrounded by a big ocean. So it talks about the north, the southern lands, the fridge, and then a word I definitely can't pronounce, but I think it's to do with pasta, so the Pengriata, and then the big water, which is around it. And then finishes off with a little section on cults and organizations, which are 6 of them, and then some wildness and weather, wilderness and weather sort of encounters that you could have in these different places. So yeah, it's basically like you could give your players a primer into if you were going to go into this world completely brand new without any homebrew at all, you would give them this chapter. And I definitely wouldn't give it as it's structured. I would definitely just give them the history of it and maybe the place we're going to set the game in, because good Lord, and when those sort of 5 or 6 places where we could go, the big areas, you go, okay, well, let's go into this bit, and then keep going, and then keep going, and you just zoom in until you have the place where you want to be, the tiny, tiny village, your tiny starting hamlet, before you get all the way to the big city. To start us off with, Ben, what, if anything, stuck out to you when you were reading this chapter, other than it's a long chapter?
I'll tell you two things I really, really loved.
Yes.
One of them is the word Clamview, which is just a little town. I can't remember which of the kingdoms it's in because, boy, they give you so much information. They just fire hose you with that information. The other thing is, my favorite thing about this so much by far, is about halfway through all of this world stuff, they just write a sea shanty that takes up a whole page.
Yes.
And it's not a bad sea shanty.
It's pretty good, isn't it?
There's actually even another Bard song thing. It's like a Bard College anthem, and it's fine. But the cream shanty is so good. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, because that particular place where it is this whole sort of pirate theme, sort of cove and whatnot, and it just weirdly fits in. And that's I do think that's one of the key selling points of this is as you read through, there'll be cool ideas for a tavern or a place of interest, but then it'll be and here's some food ideas, and you're like, oh yeah, that's again, it just gives you little bits and pieces. I just wish there was more of it, but I also wish there was more of it, but more condensed, because it definitely felt like the writers went go ham on these things, and then we're like, we'll fit it in somewhere. We'll just expand the book. But yeah, I've never seen a sea shanty. I've seen poems and stuff, but it's always been 1 or 2 verses as here's a flavoursome thing about the town, and then it goes into the town itself.
I also think sea shanties are a thing that's really easy to phone in, and I feel like they didn't.
No,
they didn't. Now that thing said, I think there is a little bit of phoning in happening here, especially in this section. But for the most part, no. I think this is some hard work that's been done here.
Absolutely. The general history, I was just going to sort of give that overview, essentially.
Let's talk about that green witch.
The history of it, I definitely think it's my first D&D campaign in terms of how the world came to be. First of all, we all start off with this sort of nomadic sort of tribes and clans who were basically starting to flourish and come together and realize that we could connect and be stronger together. This idea of different towns and villages, etc., coming together. And then we have this evil force, this sort of green witch who has the power to bring the undead, and basically this idea of rot and corruption going into all the foods, which is scary if you're made out of food, right? This idea of this corruption being visible. And in my head, when I sort of said to you off podcast, the thing that it reminded me of a lot of, whereas before we talked about like, oh, Crown of Candy and all that sort of thing, and how it's not like that. It definitely feels this Game of Thrones vibe, but also Overcooked, specifically Overcooked 2, where it's like, oh no, the unbred, we must stop them in some way and work together to do it. And yeah, once the Green Witch is sort of defeated with all the sort of kingdoms uniting and sending fighters to be in this grand sort of the War of the Frying Pan, which I will say there are certain bits where you're like, oh yes, we'll call it a cool name. But then it has absolutely nothing to do with what's happening. Like, were they using frying pans? Was there like a, are we thinking of like a D-Day?
Okay, so I didn't just miss that. I was like, why is this called the Frying Pan War?
No.
Is it because frying pans are hot and heavy, I guess? Or, oops, I didn't mean to say that.
Again, is there like a moment, when you say D-Day, everyone knows what you're talking about. Is there a certain is there a group of events that happen? Like in Eberron, there's like the day of when Ciri explodes and stuff like that. And it's like, it's called like, a certain name, which I can't think of right now. So I just found it weird. And then the war, I think, went on for a fairly long time as well. And I don't understand why it was called that. And I think that happens throughout the things where there's like, oh, here's a cool name for something. And then it's either never explained or it feels very like, all right, like there's not been a lot of thought gone into it, to the point where, as we again jokingly said, there are certain towns and hamlets, looking at you, Soupville, which doesn't necessarily have it's like it's one idea and we're gonna do it like that, and there's no problem with that, but it doesn't need so many paragraphs of text explaining why that's the case, if you see what I mean.
There's a lot of stuff that's like not food. Like not a lot. It's actually not a lot. Most of it is. And then like there's something called like the Echoing Fields, which honestly the Echoing Fields is like cool.
Good. Very cool.
It's like very interesting, but I was also like, this doesn't really fit the food thing.
Yeah. I'm just looking it up now because the Echoing Fields was to do with the war itself, and like basically you can hear the sounds of people dying and calling out for help because of this big spell fight happening from the war, and people don't get a full night's rest there if you're going there. But I'm just saying, that's such a cool idea to go there and like search for a magic item, or you have to traverse it, and like then it's like, well, feed in this history. But yeah, I will say, like, and again, maybe it's just the way we're looking at it, because there's some incredible, like, beautiful images in this book as well of like, NPCs. You have like a burrito that's a paladin, and you've got like, a beer that is like a lemonade, half-drunk lemonade that's also like, I don't know, the town crier. But then you have like, the screaming echoes of people dying in this field. It's the tone of it is really weird. But then I do feel like it makes sense because it is that political intrigue, but it just doesn't come across well in the images because the images have that such disconnect, for me at least.
It's so weird, and not in a bad way, how not funny this is. How they have, it's clear to me that was like, when they were writing this, they were like, okay, no matter what, the tone of this is going to be that we are taking it 100% seriously.
Absolutely.
Even if it's a pun or anything, there's like some of the names of things are kind of punny, but this is otherwise like pretty rough.
Yeah.
Like, what is one of the things in the history of in the Frying Pan War, there were a bunch of paladins who like sacrificed their lives like to like heal other people. It was the coffee guys.
Yeah, a dozen coffee clerics who, after being blessed by a deity, took their own lives to give vitality to those around them, which we saw a little bit in the character creation stuff. Yeah, but you're like, holy shit, that's quite brutal that you're actually describing that.
To the point where, when you were reading this, did you ever see, okay, and another thing that didn't really fit the theme is there's a place called Shadowfall.
Yes.
And like, I would read stuff like that and I would be like, is this a food thing that I'm not getting? Like, is that does coffee drink itself somehow? Is that like a joke? And like, I don't think so. I don't think it's a joke. I think they were like, we're taking this 100% seriously.
100%.
And in the last episode in chapter 1, I had kind of said like, I'm not sure this is cohesive. And I'm
Mm,
still not 100% there, but having read this second chapter, I'm like, I think I get it a little more. I think I
yeah,
get like it's not just a skin.
no.
That they they really did like they were like, no, this is a living, breathing world. It's real, and they're made of food.
And you're gonna have to fucking deal with it.
Yeah, these are people with lives.
Yeah, I was looking at Shadowfall, and yeah, it says stuff like, the shadows of tall trees cover the whole village in darkness, and very few food folk are visible outside of the buildings. Even stray dogs near the village look weak and hungry. This
They have
village has been
dogs?
ruled. Yeah, stray dogs. Yeah, there are
Are the
animals
dogs
here.
food? I like. Are they hot dogs?
The villagers are hopeless, and they don't think the village will see better days. They're just surviving day to day by forestry, hunting, and gathering. And it's just kind of like, is there a curse here? Is it just like everything looks miserable and depressing? Is it like part of some other realm or different plane of existence? 'Cause again, Shadowfall indicates to me, Shadow Realm, Shadow Dark, all that sort of thing. So yeah, like it feels kind of weird. And I'd also say on the animal stuff as well. Again, lots of the food stuff. There was I think there was like mammoth's milk or fermented yak milk or something like that. And you're just like, yeah, it was fermented mammoth's milk, and I was like, is the mammoth made out of like a dairy, or is it like what is it part of it? Because I did see like there's some like mountainside villages and stuff like that. They're like, oh yes, the ice cube goats that we have, and I'm like, oh, so they are made of some material. Yes?
Yeah.
No? Don't know.
Yes.
Yeah, for one thing, that stood out to me like really early on because, like I said, it breaks it up into different sections. You have this idea that the north has the city of five, and you have like sort of like again 5 big sort of townships or whatever come together to rule necessarily there. But also off to, I think it's the east, you have something called T Ward, which is essentially after the fall of the Green Witch, they sort of banished her to this mushy peninsula off to the right. Again, on the map, you can see it. It's just like, where is it? It's that you must never go there, Simba kind of vibes, right? And you have someone called the Tea Lady, which again, I love that as a title. In my head, I keep thinking of like, anything from the Trolley Deers, that sort of like a gentle sort of person, but clearly a militaristic, like, this is important. You've got to send people to me so we make sure this does not happen again. And it has that sort of, what if the Green Witch rises again? What if her many cultists who are going to try and bring her back? I think it's the Eternal Alchemy group, the followers of the Eater, that sort of thing, where they will like want to bring back this rot to the place. And I just thought, like, her whole shtick, where it's a place that is, very militaristic. You've got, like, a handful of, like, stuff around there. There's, like, a brewery where it's, like, one guy that runs it, but there's nobody else that comes. So it's like, a customer, hooray, Capru. I just thought that, to me, could be a really interesting place to go. But it's not necessarily a place I would start my players in. Like, I don't know where I would start my players in this particular setting at all, actually.
Yeah, it's a lot. I'm sensing, though, that T-word is your favorite thing in here.
What? Just because I'm British, Ben?
Oh my God. No, I didn't even think of that. I didn't think of it. You just speak of it with such like, you're like, I think I might love this.
No. I am very stereotypical, so it's absolutely fine. I've made that joke myself many a time. Yeah, was there any particular location or a thing that stood out to you as like, I could imagine setting an adventure there for yourself, do you think?
I'll tell you. Okay, so one thing, this was a challenging assignment for me because my least favorite part of anything, whether I'm making it or consuming it, is the world building, which I know I'm like the only person in the world that doesn't like the world building part. I will say, as I was reading, I was like, there's a lot of Western inspired food, not with that. And then like the next second I got to Lao Malamua.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, well, shut my mouth. I think that sounds like fun. This was one of the things where like one of the sort of plot hooks is that, hey, they've started doing a mining operation over here and there's gold. And I was like, why is it gold? Why is it not food? But it's protected by a banana dragon, which I think sounds great. And I would like
sounds brilliant. Yeah.
Banana dragon is a great first adversary.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, because then later on it talks about in the big water there's like the Ramond Kraken as well. And I'm like,
yes, that's so good.
That's
good for them.
Like, that's so cool. This idea of like you're on the sea, like, what's that? It's just like half a boiled egg and bacon. And you're like, oh no. Yeah, I would love more monstrous creatures. And again, I know we didn't look necessarily at the bestiary and this and all the different kinds, but like, anything like that where I'm like, you know what? maybe I'll do that in the future when I'm running D&D. I'm like, God, I need it to be silly. I need it to be fun. Let's go for a random food generator. And I go, yes,
Mhm.
it's a banana dragon. Yes, it's a Reese's Pieces owl bear. I don't know, like it's like any sort of branded sort of thing. I kind of liked, so yeah, we had the Northland, the North, sorry, which had this sort of like stuff with the T Ward. Then you have the sort of Southern Lands, which talks about the Great Pistachio Empire, which sort of was the initial movement to unite people against the Green Witch, and a few other bits and pieces like the Friesel dynasty, which has a lot of political intrigue. Pickletown, you just have to have pickles somewhere, apparently. Which
Apparently.
I will say the Pickletown stuff had an interesting thing about it being like a place of finance and having a bank and lending out things. Again, I know there's like in Game of Thrones, there is a place that is like the merchants and the coins and stuff like that. So I was like, that's actually quite an interesting concept. Like there is just one place that is the town. But personally, I really like this idea of the fridge itself. So it's in the center of Silverplate. And you have like, again, during the Frying Pan War, you had the Ice Cream Kingdom and those, and this contained obviously a lot of, dairy folk in it. But then during that, there was clearly a call for independence by the Sunday people. And it got to the point where, obviously during the war, things are getting tense. And then folks in the Sunday region started making ice golems, sculpting them. And that really helped in the war. And then it started to help for them for independence to the point where now you have the Ice Cream Kingdom and the Sunday Parliament. So that, again, it's sort of active independence. And again, that's something, it's not like brand new to a setting to have that, because it's within recent memory. I thought that was really interesting. And like, yeah, it says now, it is now considered offensive to call a sundae an ice cream. And again, your mileage may vary and that kind of thing, but I think it's just an interesting thing to explore perhaps. And this idea of like, you're looking at the mountain range and there's this big sort of glacé cherry on the top of a mountain and to signal the independence and stuff like that, and all the different waterways now, and how do you traverse this very tense time as that, with a new sort of state happening in the middle of a Pangea like setting.
And it's also like it's one of the better artworks, I think.
Yeah, agreed.
Like the big like mountain with the snow and the cherry on top is like excellent. I was really impressed by like all the art in this section as there was last time we talked about this, but I think especially like location art is hard.
Yes.
And I thought they nailed it.
I agree. Like there's definitely some really cool, like, again, you have like a blizzard like sort of I want to call it, I think it was called Frost Hymn. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was like, yeah, very much like you go fully Arctic, it's cold, it's very that sort of, again, all as we jokingly said, every town is like, oh, it's either 2 or 3-story wooden structures. You take a drink every time that happens. Yeah, I think it was Frost Hymn, whereby because it's so cold, but there's this magic in the air that bards can do, and it's through the power of song keeping you warm. And there was like a really interesting like little story about how someone went to go find their partner who had gone out adventuring, had found them frozen, and they wished to have passed away with them alongside each other. And they started to sing a song of grief, and they kept warm as a result. And now this magic of song and heat as a result is like a big part of that particular place, the Frost Hymn. And again, I was like, that's a really cool concept. I guess in my head, I'm like, yeah, I would just take that anyway without the food. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of interesting.
Yes.
Like, there's certain concepts in this particular thing where I go, this would be really cool, even if they weren't all beverages.
I don't know, though. I think that was one of the stronger points where I was like, I get why it's food now.
Okay.
Because they actually, it was more than just a joke. It was like actually something that was about food, that food warms you like both literally and figuratively.
Oh, that's true. Yes, I hadn't thought of it like that. Yeah.
I like the idea of, you survive the fridge by you get toasty with the hot cocoa. You get warm vibes. I guess you could do it without the food, but I think it like, to me, it like thematically informs.
It cements the food thing. Because I think you were saying to me off podcast, like, because there's the one thing that is quite interesting, and it's baked into like the religion side of it as well, all the different deities, they are surrounding food. So we have like the baker, the cook, and the great eater all talk about like how creation was and how important cooking is. But now we have these characters who, you go to towns like Brettberg and all that sort of thing, and they're all about like we're making bread. This is the best pasta in the region, and you're like, but are people are food eating food? And I know that's something that we were talking about last time.
Right. And it's also weird. So you were talking about this three. There's like the three. There's a lot of deities, but there's a big three: the
Yes.
baker, the cook, and the eater.
Yes.
And like the eater is definitely is like presented as like the dark god. I don't think it goes so far as to say it's evil, but its followers are definitely considered as like cultist, and that they're like persona non grata. And I'm like, why? Why is eating evil in Food World?
Yeah. So that's the thing. I will say, I don't know if the copy I sent you is the latest version of something like that, because I did see a couple of typos and stuff like that. But there definitely was a point where it says like, the baker and the cook, they are seen as good, creative,
Sure.
creators. And then it said that the eater is the end of all things and bad. But then in the actual text itself, I'm just going to read it. It said something like, it's alignment, because obviously it says stuff like, alignment, domains, yada, yada. It goes, the great eater is a neutral entity beyond good and evil, or law and chaos, as well as beyond the comprehension of mere mortals. I was like, I mean, I don't know, because like you said, the followers are then like, yes, the end is nigh. It's like, everyone else sees it as a bad thing. Maybe it's because it's trying to do with the rot stuff, because obviously we have like the god of decay and the god of waste and pests. But yeah, for me, I was like, it feels like, such a disconnect. It does feel like the Great Eater should be the end of all things, and that could be seen as evil. But I guess, I don't know. I think maybe it had to be more good or evil.
Yeah, to me, like making the food and then eating the food is like a yin and a yang thing. And like that would be my thing. Like I can see how those two things are at odds with each other, but like create a balance. Mm-hmm. I think they didn't quite land they didn't quite land the plane there.
I also think, maybe this is controversial, because again, I read it through as a I don't think you need a cook and a baker. So the cook is like the creator of the kitchen.
Bakers are a very specific kind of cook, right?
Right, exactly. And so it says here, the cook is the creator of the kitchen, an ancient cosmic entity, one of the pillars of the universe. It created the kitchen, all the culinary arts, and all the recipes. They're the owner of all kitchens, and many believe that they are the creator of the first food folk. They are prepared, cooked, and baked them one by a time, baked, before sending them into the fertile lands of Silverplate. And then the baker is also an ancient cosmic entity, the creator of all baked goods from bread to pastries, and is the master of all ovens. Many believe that the baker is the one who first created baked goods and some other food folk, kneading and shaping them before sending them out to explore the universe. Again, maybe it comes that thing of like, is it chicken or the egg? Is it, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit? Use all that sort of thing. And I'm just going like, just pick a lane. Pick the cook. Surely that's what we're thinking, right?
Also, what does the maker of all ovens mean? Is that metaphorical? Like nobody makes ovens; they're just naturally occurring.
Oh, that's great. Those are the three main gods, and then we've got 10 other sort of like smaller gods, but they still have a lot of text to them. You have a god of fertility. You have two gods that are to do with decay, kind of. There's one that's actual decay, and then one of waste and pests, which I think they're brothers or siblings in some respect. We've got a god of preservation and coal that sort of is it within the fridge section. Grawn is the taste and nature god. But I will say my favourite god is K-Pack, whose symbol is a real person's face, which is then cut out, and then it's clearly cake. And they're supposed to be like this sort of like low-key type of character, like very trickster-esque. But I'm not entirely sure I understood. It was like, is it trying to change things with cake? Because they had a whole thing about their worshippers having like cake on them, but it's like, oh, it's keys. Aha, it's cake, and that's how I'm a worshipper of this K-Pack person. You know what I mean? I thought it was a really.
I'm going to be honest. I just got that.
Oh, I see. This is the thing. I was just like,
I just got it's supposed to be the is it cake thing. I think you even tried to tell me before we started recording that that's what it was, and I kind of just got that.
But it's so niche to something that's quite recent for us, you know what I mean? And I'm just thinking, like, everything else is like, you got Crunch, the god of war and weaponry. You have Mortar, death and change. Squorn, the righteous fury of searing heat. And then you got K-Pack, the is it Kate god? It's like, what the fuck? What other gods would you have that are in that sort of niche, like, sort of like don't get me wrong, I really like it, but it seems like a real fun cultural reference that not, again, a little bit out of sorts with the other sort of pantheon of gods, It
feels like the people who wrote this were like, no bad ideas. We're going to put down every idea we have. And I think that has kind of hurt that cohesion I'm looking for some, even though like I'm not sure there are bad ideas in this.
No, not at all.
But yeah, you're right. It's like weird, like it's discordant.
Yes, absolutely. There's like, because yeah, going on from that, because obviously this raised questions for me about like, okay, so we have like the great pistachio empire, and there's a little bit about like nuts and whatnot, but do we talk about allergies? I know that there is like, I think it's in the fridge and like some sort of dairy thing. It says, oh, this is like a dairy free like drink, or we have the almond milking thing, like that sort of thing, and I'm like, it's again, and maybe this is too specific perhaps, but like there's no mention necessarily of like a vegan or vegetarian diet, and what does that mean? I just think any of those sort of things, like the big thing is that it talks about like fishing and whatnot, but there's no real mention of like anyone that is like a seafood. Is that too? Does it have to be always sushi? You know what I mean? Like I'm just trying to work out like there's no like when you think, oh yeah, hamburger, you don't think of like, I don't know, half a salmon. I'm trying to work out like where would you put seafood in this?
You see in some of the illustration stuff, like someone is a strawberry. Is someone just like a whole fish? Is that a thing?
A reverse mermaid? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there's my big questions. Again, it just leaves me with more questions, but like, what is this? But obviously, that's for me to answer in play, I guess, as a GM. So I've no big thing about that. But I just was like, if you've got a ramen kraken, for example, it feels to me like you don't have fish people, or shrimp, or anything like that. So yeah, again, I think my big thing was always like in the character creation, if we had like random tables to be like, you're this food, you're that food, rather than like because then there's like a whole section about like, I think it's in the Friesel dynasty, that's where all the junk food and the fast food are. So that's where you'd have your hamburgers or your fries or anything like that. And then further out you have maybe more organic sort of apples, corn, that sort of thing. And I was like, yeah, what if you were like a bowl of salad? What does that mean? I guess my big thing, there didn't seem to be much in terms of like, what if you are a beverage? Like they obviously talked about like, common is the most talked language, and followed by Yummish, and then Beverick. But then it didn't feel like beverages, like you have like, oh, someone that's in the tavern, but it felt very rare to have like, this is a place where all the beverages are, because we have places like the pirate place is more like, oh, there's lots of pasta here. You got obviously the fridge is like, oh, all frozen cold foods, mostly ice cream, but other things that, you know what I mean. And I was like, where did beverages come into this? Because you could play one, you know what I mean.
I'll tell you one thing I liked, because I feel like we've been a little hard on it for the past few minutes. I was delighted to see that there was some food in this food book. Now I wish there was a little more. And I wish it was maybe in one place. It's all scattered about in
all over.
Yeah, in the locations. But a lot of these locations will have a few like dishes that you can buy at some places. There's a lot of inns. There's a lot of inns and
that's always the way. They're always like, oh, by the way, you want a tavern? Here's 5, and you're like, oh god, anything else.
But they'll have a menu, which I think is cool, and they have. It's weird because some of them are like they give you like a buff, and then some of them don't.
Yeah.
It's weird. And so I wish it'd been a little more consistent in that, but like,
would you prefer it if it was just flavor text, or if they all gave you a buff?
No, it needs to do something in this. This, it needs to do something.
100%.
But I'm a big fan of like, if I'm eating in a game, I want to know what I'm eating. I want to know what's on the menu. And I like that they were like, hey, we made a food thing and we did that this time. I do like, what's the one that's like called like the blue truffle, and it serves a dish called the blue truffle.
Yeah, it's like it's always truffle, and it's like 10 gold pieces. It's very expensive.
So expensive. Well, truffle's expensive. Anything.
Yeah, well, yeah, but then I don't think that. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think there's any mechanical benefit. So it's like, cool. I ain't buying that.
You could impress someone, I guess. Throw your money around.
Well, that's probably what you do, right? You'd be like, okay, so here's the menu. Go, well, I'm going to buy the most expensive thing on the menu to charm the diplomat or whatever. It goes, okay, yeah, you get an advantage on whatever role it is. So yeah, I think that's what I would do if it wasn't a mechanical benefit for you, the player. Because a lot of them are like, oh, you drink this and you feel warm for like an hour, and you make advantages against the cold and all that sort of thing.
We can talk about that a little bit. I mean, we'll get to this in a second. There's some like cults and organization stuff, and they have explicit plot hook sections in the book, and nothing else in this section has that. And we were kind of thinking, I think both of us were like, I would have liked to see more of that.
100%.
Maybe that's a place they could have incorporated that if you have a plot hook, if you don't have a mechanical benefit, if you just want to have it flavor, give them a plot hook.
My big thing, as I was saying to you off podcast, is that there's mentions of these different political structures. Obviously, you've got ruling families, you've got councils, you've got in the Lau Mau island places or the city state. That's basically if you're a merchant that has a certain amount of coin coming in, you can be on the council. I like all the different things like that, but I feel like those systems of ruling could have been separate and a little bit more to it. They were very good at naming people and giving them some motivations and stuff like that, but it was all sort of, again, felt a lot in one place, and it wasn't as spread out as it could be. And that's the only thing I'd say. Like, I think I said to you, it's in the north, but it's to do with the dynasty in the Sizzler family from Cutlery Fork.
So good.
Great name. An old licorice candy called Dea was a member of this family, but she was never liked by the family. I was always excluded from all events. And then one day, the family decided to exile her in secret. 4 family members took her to the depths of the forest and left her there. When they returned, they organized a huge, large funeral for her, pretending that they were broken up about their young daughter's untimely death. And many neighbors and families heard of this tragedy and shed tears for the poor girl they hardly ever saw. Dana still lives in the forest, and her constant isolation has slowly consumed her mind. She believes that she is one of the trees and stands completely still for days on end, listening to the silence. What a cool story.
Excellent stuff.
I mean, the only thing I'd add onto that is that she is now the heir to Cutlery Fork. She's the true heir, and everyone else has died. And then you bring her back, and she's like, "Oh, I don't wish to be here." And also, like you said, like it would be like someone's name, and it goes, "They are a licorice candy. They are a blueberry sundae." It's just always sort of like, "Oh, what does that look like?" And I kind of liked how there was no repeat of food things for food folk as a leader and stuff. I thought that was really interesting. Almost like they were like, okay, let's go through the random food generator. It is a banana. Hooray! And then put that into the word field as they were typing this all up. Shall we go on then to cults and organizations?
Cults and organizations, mostly cults.
Mostly, probably a cult. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think this follows on to your point about having more plot hooks and more organizations. Here's where I would put maybe a bit more of the ruling families and classes and stuff. The big cults, it's kind of weird. I would have probably split them up into actual like organizations and cults, because like the Golden Sculptors Guild, the Gourmet Club. I mean, I don't know about you. I ain't joining the Yeast Institute anytime soon. Feels a bit dangerous.
I might be a part of a fancy gourmet club.
Oh, that sounds great. It's very much like a Stonecutters from Simpsons kind of vibe that I've got from there.
Yeah.
Sort of the big one in terms of 2 cults is the Eternal Alchemy and the Followers of the Eater. And the Eater we've talked about a little bit before about this idea of doomsday cult. The followers of the Eater are known as the Eaters, and they are just about devouring and consuming. So that's where we kind of talked about it a little bit last week about the idea of cannibalism, and if you go down this route, you can get a certain way, but it's seen as a very bad thing. It feels almost like you take the bad route in the Baldur's Gate game. You go Dark Urge and start eating your friends. And the Eternal Alchemy is to do with the Green Witch. It's that sort of like bringing back power, undead, almost like a lich type thing. Is what I got from it, at least.
I really kind of just realized cannibalism in this is interesting. Because like I feel like a lot of a repulsion of cannibalism is that it, in addition to it being horrible, it also seems gross. But what if other people were made of the things you eat anyway? What if other people were made of food? Like I feel like the temptation to eat someone else becomes much greater.
I think in my head, what I would do is that you never need to worry about food or drink as a food folk person. But then those people who then eat other people, that's the bad. Yeah, I think which is a shame, because obviously you talked about like how important creating food is, and like here are these recipes that it's like very exciting. But I just think it gets really meta, because then the line blurs a bit. Well, I ate some cheese, and that person was made of cheese. I think it's okay. It's like, instead of like justifying goes down a slippery slope, especially when You could have players who are like, it's fine. They don't mind. It's part of them, so.
Yeah. Okay. It's like reverse. It's like, if you're a cheese person, it's actually okay for you to eat cheese.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the first chapter, there was I can't remember exactly what it was. There was a thing near the end of the chapter that was like another flavor on like what your character could be. And it was only like 3 things.
Oh, the backgrounds. Yeah.
And like, this feels like the same thing. This feels like there's like so much of everything else. And then this feels like not enough. It feels like there's not enough stuff here. And the other thing is like, I want to be an eater so bad. And like, they keep telling me like, it's kind of bad. It's kind of bad. They don't like you if you do that. Like, what's the initiation here?
Oh, it's really cruel, the initiation, yeah.
Oh, yeah, you have to eat stuff that's inedible, which seems antithetical.
Yeah.
But I guess you eat everything.
Yeah, it's such as solid rock, seawater, and rotten food, and then must spend months in what cultists call nothing chambers, which work like preservation chambers where members cannot eat, drink, hear, smell, or see anything. Wow. Those who successfully complete these grueling initiations are granted a special power. They can eat whatever they want without restrictions. So I guess that's the thing, is that goes from like you're not eating at all, you're restricting everything, to there just being this all-consuming hunger and power. And I think that's a really cool like concept to play with. But yeah, it just seemed wild. Like you now must eat rock and some seawater, and that is it. I think I would just leave it to rotten food. I think like you have that special like,
I don't know. I like the idea of the eaters being not rotten food. They just eat things that aren't food. They eat everything, even if it's not food. Yeah, they eat rocks.
It's very much like that's almost like in the No Face is Studio Ghibli, who just like starts to eat and eat and eat and it expands until they're told no. That could be quite cool.
But see, I also like the Gourmet Club, because weirdly, the Gourmet Club is also about eating food, but it's not bad.
Yeah.
Or I don't know, maybe they are. Maybe they're seen as they are a bit of a secret society. Maybe they are slightly nefarious.
They had the whole thing of like, what's it that they have like a top 7 people, but if one of them decides to leave, they get their memories wiped or something. I seem to remember. Entering the inner circle requires a completely different process. The regular members know nothing of the inner circle, and the organizations aim to keep it that way. The only way to enter is to be invited. And once invited, you cannot leave the circle without their knowledge of the circle being wiped from their memories. Oh, okay. So it's not okay. So it's the actual knowledge of the inner circle. But that's kind of it. It's not like a. It's like, oh, we fell out with Derek, so we wiped his memory. Like, we got rid of him. He was too big for his boots. Kept getting the last dessert,
This is another thing that has a song too. Another song they wrote. It's not as good as a shanty, but it's still fun.
Yeah, you were talking about the plot hooks as well. One of the plot hooks for that particular gourmet club was like a member of the club is planning an assassination attempt using the network of the club. I'm like, that's great. I love that idea as almost like a fine dining evening, and if someone is murdered, and you're like, well, it must be one of the 100 members that came here. Lock the doors,
Yeah.
Yeah, and other than that, like, again, we don't need to go into the wilderness and weather section necessarily. It has some nice, cool things in terms of, like, here's what we could think about in terms of monsters, etc.
I will say, I actually thought this was one of the strongest things I read for this episode.
For sure. Yeah, was there a particular bit?
It's only a couple pages, but it's several tables of things. And I was like, these tables are so good. I need more tables. The encounters in this stuff is really good. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty short. There's not much to do. There's not much to tell you other than they're good encounters, especially the you roll a d20 for weather conditions, and some of them are very good.
I was gonna say, like, you got eggnog fog, you've got coffee hailstorm, cherry blossom snow. Again, the vibe of it. Can you imagine? You've had a political intrigue sort of thing. There's been a big, like, you're, I don't know, in the middle of a battlefield. You're at the echoing fields, and then suddenly you're like, oh, and now black pepper rain starts to fall. It's just like, what a weird twist. You don't get normal rain, you get the black pepper rain. Again, I like there's some really cool, like, interesting ones. Like I said, like, but for this, I was like, maybe I will do normal weather perhaps for those particular scenes. But I did like them. Like glitter showers, the other one I saw as well.
Just the first one, like, just to read some actual text from this. It's the black pepper rain. And it just rains black pepper for 1d4 hours. And it says it makes everyone in the area feel itchy, but, like, it should be sneezy. Like, come on. And you have disadvantage on concentration checks.
And yeah, I would say the eggnog fog one. those who travel in the eggnog fog become dizzy. The fog lasts for 1d6 hours.
You get a little drunk.
Get a little tipsy. Each creature in the midst has disadvantage on attack rolls and wisdom perception checks that rely on sight. Yeah, I like that idea. You're just wandering about, going like... So, Ben, obviously, last time we chatted, you were thinking about whether you would use this particular setting, because you had an idea. So, obviously, you don't need to go into necessarily what you've got planned for role-play retcon. But after reading this chapter, do you feel more convinced to use something like this for stuff you have planned, or would you change a lot of it, if you know what I mean, as a sort of your general overview of this?
I still think if I used it for the thing I'm thinking of, that this would work, and I wouldn't even have to do a lot of like homebrewing, like reskinning
nice.
it. Yeah, I really don't think I would. I think I'm still interested in, like, my problems with its cohesion, I feel like maybe if I fill in the blanks, it will get there.
Because I know, obviously, with Roleplay Retcon, obviously, you do a whole different, like, obviously, remaking bad movies, and obviously that's a whole lot.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, but it's also lots of different genres. I mean, admittedly, sometimes there's a comedic take on it as well. Does that mean the story that you're thinking of, would it be more comedic, or would it be, how this is like, it is serious throughout? Do you know what I mean? Like,
the thing I'd like to do is a movie called Food Fight with an exclamation point. It's a weird one. And it's about, it has this like weirdly star-studded cast in it, like Wayne Brady in it, and the main character is Charlie Sheen, and it's got even a cameo by Christopher Lloyd. And one of the Desperate Housewives is in it.
Wow, not desperate, huh?
I get the impression they paid him, because the animation in it is like it's eye-stabbingly bad.
Oh, really?
And it's just this like incomprehensible story, but it's basically this like sort of detective story / battle for the soul at the grocery store. And it takes place like in a grocery store world where everything is like at night, it like kind of turns into a city, and everyone in the city is these they're called Ikes. They're like mascots of different brands.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, I could stiuld do that. I could do that. And I was like, instead of it being like a noir detective thing, we just do this instead.
Oh, okay.
And I think it could work. I think it could work. You could still battle for the soul of the grocery store, I think, in Silverplate.
Absolutely. Oh, yes, I see. Yeah, Charlie Sheen, Eva Longoria, and Hilary Duff of all
Hilary
folks.
Duff. I was trying to remember who like Raisin's mascot cat lady was. And also, you may be looking at the poster now, where the main characters of the movie itself are way in the background. And in the front are the actual licensed food icons they got to cameo in the movie, but aren't actually characters. I mean, they're in the movie. The tuna and the plastic stork and the Twinkie rodeo guy. They're all in the movie, walking around in the background, but they're not characters.
That's so funny. It genuinely looks like, the three names at the top are those three characters. That's why I was like, oh, so that's what they play. Okay, weird choice. I guess Hilary Duff being some sort of like shark type person, but good for her. I guess she gets break out of that. Wow, incredible.
Now Charlie Sheen plays a dog that's supposed to be a serial mascot, and he dresses like Indiana Jones, but he's a detective. It's great. They couldn't pick a lane.
Couldn't pick a lane. I feel like Silverplate has a lot of stuff in it, and I think if I was going to use anything from it, I'd like the idea of the fridge stuff about that sort of recent breakaway of politics. The idea of rot sounds interesting. I will say the Green Witch sounds like a bad name. I would want something else for it. It just feels a bit like we don't call it the Green Witch, I'd also say as well, like there is like a book, I think it's called like The Blight of the Green Witch or something like that, which is like an adventure book, and it's not one shots. They are like full on campaigns or like series of stuff where you can start as level 1 characters, go all the way up to level 10, and go over the whole setting. And I'm like, that's pretty impressive. But I'm just like, I need some more plot hooks. They're like, here's your starter session. You do maybe one or two things, and you're like, congratulations, now Silverplate is yours. I just can't imagine currently, because of what we talked about in terms of like its flaws, doing a longer campaign of, I've said I've done like a 6-episode series of Blaze in the Dark, which feels like is a big city, but it's like quite easy to manage. Here we have a whole Pangea continent with lots of different things, and I'm just like, I don't know where I'd start. I don't know where I'd go. I definitely need a small introductory chapter or adventure as a quick start. This is the thing. I was wondering if it was like a quick start or a primer or something like that so that we could talk about it. And there wasn't. It was just like, here's a fully fledged book, because obviously it is a setting. But I was just there like going, "Man, I just want a quick one-off adventure, just be like, you're beverage people. Take this thing and go all the way to, Sunday Mountain."
A nice like beginner adventure might have been nice, and I don't think there is one in here.
I don't think there is either. I think it's like magic items and bestiary.
Yeah,
is what's left. But there you go. That's our sort of quick overview of that chapter of Silverplate. We're not going to return, unfortunately, but I think I would recommend people to check it out if you can. It is, I will say, it's roughly about $30 on Drive-Thru RPG. So if you're maybe look at the preview first and see if it's got some good images and stuff like that. Although I will say, my big complaint, actually, before we sign off, there is a map in the thing, in the actual, like it's a splash page, but it's not labeled. You have no idea where anything is. You have no idea how far anything is from each other. And then you go in and you see these amazing, 2-page spreads of like the Arctic sort of village, the Sunday Mountain, all that sort of thing. You're like, wow, these places are huge. The map's not huge at all. It looks very much like the video game map that you get in the physical, PS2 thing. You go, oh, okay, I'm here, I guess, and you're pointing. So I need a bit more of a detailed map necessarily so I can describe places. But yeah, I think the artwork's really good. I think it's got some good ideas there. I don't know if I would currently pay $30 for it, because I do think there's some bits missing for it. But I hope if people find this interesting that they can go and check it out and see if there's a preview on Drive-Thru RPG.
I'll give one big compliment. I think, regardless of how well it would actually go in a game, I think this is actually a pretty good book.
Yes.
This you could do worse for bathroom reading, and I mean that in the most complimentary way. It's really, you want to just read one little blurb at a time. It's not bad. Yeah. It's a fun read.
No, I agree. I think, again, it feels there's a lot to it, but if you're not prepping something, you usually need ideas. Absolutely checking something out from this. And certainly, from what I saw of the magic items and stuff, I was like, oh, that sounds like a cool item. I'll maybe use that, etc. Well, Ben, thank you so much for coming with me on this journey back to Silverplate. I very much appreciate your time here. Tell us, where can we find your work? What stuff are you up to? And is there anything we should be looking out for on Roleplay Retcon?
You can find all of my personal stuff at heybenjamingray.com, a website that I definitely need to update. But there's still lots of good stuff there. But primarily, I'm part of the podcast Roleplay Retcon. We talked about that a little bit, where we remake famously disappointing movies with role-playing games as miniseries. I am sure that we will still be deep into our Pacific Rim Uprising series whenever this comes out. It will probably be a long one, because we're playing Lancer, which is crunchy.
Woohoo!
But that's fun. We're doing that with Hen, who is also called I Write Robots in a lot of parts of the world, the internet. And also I make that show with my friends Jinsey and Alex. And every series also has an indie artist on it as our soundtrack, and this time it's Behold, which you may have heard a lot of his music on My First Dungeon, which is another pretty good actual play podcast.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Ben, and thank you folks from around the world listening to this episode of the DM's Book Club. We'll be back next week with another fun topic for you, but until then, we'll say goodbye for now. Goodbye.
Bye.